4th, 2020. This morning I want to talk about storms. And most of us, maybe all of us, are experiencing storms right now with the corona craziness that's going on around our world. And from today's message, I want to share with you there's value in the storms. So stay with me, and I believe you'll be encouraged. The passage today is out of Mark 6, verses 45 to 52. So let me read that first. Immediately after this, late in the afternoon, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and head across the lake to Bethsaida, while he sent the people home. After telling everyone goodbye, he went up to the hills by himself to pray. Late that night, the disciples were in their boat in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on land. He saw that they were in serious trouble, rowing hard and struggling against the wind and the waves. Early in the morning, Jesus came towards them, walking on the water. But when they saw him, they were cried out in terror, thinking he was a ghost. They were terrified when they saw him. And Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid. Take courage. I am here." And then he climbed into the boat, and the wind stopped, and they were totally amazed. So I want to start with a little bit of context when it says immediately after this. What had preceded this event was the feeding of the 5,000, where he'd spent the entire day with the people, and now it was late afternoon. And some simple observations. It says that Jesus insisted that his disciples get in the boat and leave without him. And there are times where Jesus sends us into a storm, in this case, by ourselves. He insisted that they leave without him. And then it says that he went up in the mountains to be alone and to pray, to spend time sharing his heart and listening to the heart of the Father. And I think many times in prayer, we tend to talk more than we tend to listen. But I think how important it is to hear what the Father is saying. And then it says that late at night, which by the context of the language, probably somewhere around midnight or maybe 1 o'clock in the morning. But late at night, it says that he saw his disciples were in serious trouble. He saw them straining against the oars. He saw that they were exhausted and in danger. So what I want you to see is that before this storm, Jesus was already praying. And probably 4 or 5 hours he was praying for his disciples. And then he saw the disciples in the storm. And then this is really a critical observation. That in the early morning, it says he began walking on the water towards them. So the time frame is really important, where you see late at night, he sees they were in serious trouble around midnight, and early in the morning, around 4 o'clock in the morning, he began walking to them. What we see is a 3 or 4 hour time period where Jesus knew they were struggling, but he believed that it was more important that they struggle than for him to come and comfort them at that time. He allowed them to struggle. And this is where it's really important to understand the heart of the Father and the nature of storms. And so we see from the story, the next thing that happens is he does walk to them. They're frightened, and he says 3 things. He says, 1, don't be afraid. Or another translation says, don't give in to fear, or don't yield to fear. And secondly, he says, take courage, reach out, trust me. And third thing, he says, I'm here, I'm with you. And then he climbs into the boat, and then the storm stops. But what I want you to see is the value of the storm. So when my 6th son was 18, 19 years old, he worked for a tree company where he helped plant trees. And one day he helped me transplant a large aspen tree in our front yard. And we planted the tree. It was a large tree, but it had a very small root system because it had just been transplanted. And so we also live in a windy area. And so it's important that that tree be supported so that when the wind blew, it wouldn't just blow over. And so we drove down a post on each side of the tree and took wire and wired it to the tree. Well, the next day, I came out to look at the tree, and I noticed that the wire was not tight, but it was actually kind of loose, like this. And so I felt, oh, he must have forgot to tighten it up. So I took a tool and tightened up each side so that now that tree couldn't wiggle at all. And I was so proud of what I did. I didn't say anything to my son. A couple of days later, he stopped over and says, "Dad, what'd you do?" And I said, "Well, I see that you didn't leave the wires tight. And so I tightened them up so that tree can't move." And he said, "Dad, you don't understand that if that tree is staked down on each side and it's really tight, and the wind comes and the storms come and it can't move, it will never develop deep roots. It's actually the movement caused from the storm that triggers the roots to grow down deep and to grow strong." And so what I didn't understand was that I had wanted to protect that tree, not allow it to experience the storm, but actually the storm has a benefit to the tree because the storm, with some movement back and forth, is what causes the tree to grow strong roots. And then as I looked at John 15, I see that God is glorified when we produce fruit with our lives. Guess what? To produce fruit takes strong roots. Strong roots require storms to grow. And so I begin to understand God's value that he places in the storms. And so in this situation, this storm, he allowed the disciples to grow discouraged. He allowed the disciples to strain at the oars, to become exhausted. He saw that they were struggling, and then he waited, maybe 3 or 4 hours. And then he came to them, and he said those 3 things: don't be afraid, take courage, I am here. And then he got into the boat, and the storm was over. And that's my prayer for us, is that we will really value and treasure the storms and trust, 1, that Jesus sees us struggling, 2, he's coming and he's saying, don't be afraid, I am here. And 3, he will climb into our boat and he will stop the storm. And so, Father, I pray for my dear sons and daughters around the world. I pray that you'd give them fresh hope today, fresh encouragement. You see them. You see the storm. You see the struggle. You see their pain. You see their anxiety. And I pray, Father, that you would give them the perspective that they would say, yes, he sees me, he's coming, and he's going to climb in my boat. And so in the name of Jesus, I pray peace over my sons and daughters. Be blessed. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.